Hi, my name is Taha. No, ew. Hi, my name is Taha. I am a half Indian, half Pakistani gay person. When I was a kid growing up, I was super in the closet, and there were a lot of words that I wish I had heard that I didn't get. So I'm hoping to provide those words and just put them out in the universe for anyone who needs to hear them. So growing up, realizing I was gay in a homophobic household sucked. Okay, wait. Blah, blah, blah. Growing up, realizing I was gay in a homophobic household sucked. Repression was literally everything. Knowing my family could basically just disown me meant that I was putting up walls between us for my entire life, like starting from childhood. There were a couple of moments that really stood out to me in my life where these walls really made themselves known. Not to get too poetic on here, but I remember seeing my baby niece for the first time in the hospital, and I looked at her and I remember the first thing I thought was, there is no point to this. She's going to grow up to hate me or think that I am disgusting or that there's something wrong with me. A lot of moments like that growing up where I would get happy about something and then it would just be like, no. If they knew who you really were, they wouldn't want to know you. They wouldn't want to be near you. And there was also anger, a lot of anger. There were a lot of things that younger me needed. There were a lot of things that younger me needed to hear that he didn't get to hear. So, like I said before, these words are for anyone going through something similar that may need to hear them. Here's my story. I am 24 years old. I'm gay. I'm agnostic. I have two older siblings who are 32 and 34, one brother, one sister, and they're both married with kids. I live in Toronto, Canada. My mom is an Indian Muslim and my dad is a Pakistani Muslim. I grew up partially in the United Arab Emirates and I moved to Canada when I was 9 years old in 2004. My parents have always been somewhat conservative. They're religious for sure. My dad has always been very conservative. My mom has been a little more on the liberal side for sure. But still definitely holds traditional beliefs. Growing up in the environment I grew in honestly sucked. My entire family, cousins and siblings were all very super homophobic people, and they had super homophobic views. And I grew up hearing things like gay people deserve to be beheaded and being gay is abnormal. So naturally, I grew up with those beliefs even before I realized I was gay. In fact, when I was 9 years old, I remember same-sex marriage was just legalized in Canada. And I remember hearing from my relatives how bad that was. I didn't know why it was bad. I just knew that it was bad. And so I remember going to one of my friends at recess and being like, oh, did you hear about how they're letting guys marry each other? Isn't that so bad? And my friend and I, at the age of 9, were talking about how horrible it was that this was allowed, not really knowing enough to have that opinion, but growing up surrounded by those opinions meant that we, by proxy, just had them and kind of just decided that that's how the world was. So naturally, I grew up with those beliefs. I realized I was gay when I was 14. I was taking a shower and I had this intrusive sexual thought about some random man I walked past at the really dingy mall that I worked at. I worked at this linen store. I would sell curtains to people. It was really weird. And honestly, it's funny now, but it was seriously one of the worst moments of my life. The panic, the fear, everything, it was so overwhelming, and I spent the rest of my life fighting every thought, every urge that told me that I was sexually attracted to men. And I remember a few months later in the 9th grade, I asked one of my friends why she was dating someone. So at this point, honestly, as much as I knew that I was gay and had that thought, I repressed it enough to truly convince myself it wasn't there. And I asked a friend of mine why she was dating her boyfriend if she didn't want to marry him. She said something about fulfilling sexual urges, and I remember being very confused because I was like, what? Sexual urges? The idea that people were dating for anything other than marriage was wild to me because I didn't know that you were supposed to have your sexual urges fulfilled by the person you're dating. See, with my gayness being repressed, I didn't know that sexuality was intrinsically related to marriage and love. And that was an interesting turning point for me in a way, just because I had to conceptualize that that's why people my age were starting to date. I kind of had to wrap my head around that because that was all foreign territory to me. Then flash forward to when I was 15. I remember my cousins from Pakistan visited and we were really close. And they always talked about how weird it was that I didn't check out girls. So they trained me to. I specifically remember being told how to check out women, and I was prompted to do so whenever we went out, which looking back was like super gross, and like as an aside gave me this like insider's view of the way that women are objectified by boys at such a young age. And it was all super uncomfortable, but I trained myself to do it because, again, I believed that that was the key. I just wasn't checking out people, which is why I might have had like intrusive gay thoughts once in a while. Flash forward the next summer, it's the summer before grade 11. I actually had a phase where I was really religious because I wanted to pray for my gayness to go away, and I would pray about 5 times a day, and I remember I kept on praying to God to fix the disease that I had, and these are the words I would use when I was praying. And needless to say, it didn't work because I don't have a disease. There's nothing wrong with me. You know, again, things I didn't know at the time that I wish were told to me. Now, if we flash forward another year, it was the summer before grade 12. I think by that time, I was definitely more honest with myself about the fact that I like girls. So yeah, I didn't like girls, that I liked boys. So like that repression of my sexuality was definitely still happening, but everything I'd been containing wasn't able to be as contained anymore. I was becoming more aware. Everything happening in my heart was reaching my brain. So I was more conscious of the fact that I liked guys. And, you know, I still convinced myself that that wasn't the case. And I remember there was this one really sweet girl that I was friends with in high school, and we did musical theater, and I remember this one really sweet girl in high school who I did musical theater with, which, how did my parents not know I did musical theater? So this girl that I liked, or this friend of mine that I thought I liked, had this Nutella sandwich. And she would bring it to school every day and share it with her friend who wasn't allowed to have Nutella sandwiches. And I remember seeing that in rehearsal and being like, wow, she's so nice. She's the girl I like. I have a crush on this girl. I had decided I liked her, half knowing I was gay, half hoping it could change. Now let's flash forward a couple of years. By the time I was 20, I had fully come to terms with my sexuality. Everything I was trying to repress, everything I was trying to hide couldn't be hidden anymore. And I was openly agnostic at that time with my friends. Not openly out of the closet, but openly agnostic. I stopped lying to myself about liking women. I knew I was gay. I had not told myself that properly yet. I hadn't been with anyone, anything like that. So nobody knew that I was gay, but I definitely did. And by the time I was 21, I had come out to my friends. So I remember it happened when I was with a really good friend of mine at the time. She is also queer. And I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to tell her because I haven't told anyone and it's eating at my soul. And I just know there isn't anything wrong with me for feeling this way. And I need to talk to someone who can understand. And she's like this incredible person with like the biggest heart in the world. And I remember I was like, hey, can we hang out? I want to talk to you about this thing. And she's like, what thing? I'm like, oh, let's just chat when we get there. So I was in the car with her and we were just at a red light like 15, 20 minutes away still. And she was like, so what do you want to talk about? Because it was super silent. And I was like, oh, let's just chat when we get there. And the stoplight's still red. And she looks at me and she's like, are you going to tell me that you're gay? And I said yes. And I asked her how she knew. Couldn't even process that I said yes. And before I even proceed, the catharsis, the release, the joy, the fear, the everything that had been hidden for so long was just kind of pouring out. And it felt good already to just say yes when someone asked me that question. And I said, how'd you know? And she was like, I've known for a while. And she said, I've noticed that your body language changes significantly when you're around guys versus when you're around girls. And I was like, that's interesting, because I didn't know I did that. And we went to this like spot near this like really beautiful like cliff-like area that overlooked the city, and we sat in her car and just talked for hours. And I told her everything. I told her all of my dreams of one day being able to love somebody the way that I wanted to love. And it was one of the most important days of my life. And I'm so grateful to have had my friend to help me through that. And at that point I was like, okay, it's time to come out to my close friends. And I did. And I was really lucky because my close friends were very liberal and open-minded, and it didn't affect them at all. It was really liberating being able to tell people that were close to me about who I was and my true authentic self. And by that time I had downloaded Tinder, and that year I went on a few dates. I had my first kiss at the age of 21. It was a good time. Like, I got to explore my sexuality and like see what that was all about. And it was really special, honestly. Another thing that made it so special is that I was so certain that I wouldn't ever be able to do that. You know, I was like, what if I just lie about myself and marry a woman so my family doesn't hate me? But then I was like, no, I'm not going to ruin a woman's life by tricking her into a loveless marriage. It's so fucked up because you hear about guys doing that, and it's like, oh, it's so sad that like he was gay and like he had to hide it and married this person. And it's like, yes, that's super sad, but like, what about the person whose life you're ruining? It is deceptive to tell someone and make them believe that you're loving them wholly and completely, but knowing that you're not, and not having them know that, if that makes sense. And that wasn't something that would be able to ever sit right with me. And so I knew I had to tell my family one day. And I knew I wanted to do it when there was someone special in my life. It would just make it easier. I felt like it would give me like the push to talk to them about it. 2, I wanted to do it when I was completely financially independent, so that if I was disowned, I would still be able to support myself. And 3, I wanted to do it when I was living away from home, so that I had my safe space to do it from and a place to go back to, so that my home base wasn't unsafe for me. So I stayed true to that plan, and I'm honestly really glad I did. And those were 3 guidelines that really helped me make sure that I was in like a safe space, both mentally and physically, when I came out to them. Then we flash forward again to when I was 23, and I met my current boyfriend of a year and a half, and he's wonderful. And I remember I was like, okay, so I have a job in my field. I'm financially independent. I have a significant other now. I just need my own place. At this point, I was planning to apply for grad school. And so I told my mom that through a mutual friend, I found a roommate in Toronto, and that it was a really good deal. So I had to latch onto it for grad school if I got in. It took a lot of convincing, but I did it. And my boyfriend and I got a place together and moved in together. And after a few months of living together, lots of therapy, starting medication for my very intense anxiety that had developed as a result of all of this repression, I did the unthinkable and I came out to my family. I remember I came out to my brother first in my family because I trusted him the most. I ominously told him to go to this like weird little Tim Hortons near our house, and sat him down and came out to him, literally like almost crying at the table. He was really supportive, and it honestly caught me off guard. And I was really happy. Like, I honestly love him so much. And I remember I was so sad because I was like, does this mean I get to stay in my nephew's life, his son's life? Because I love him. I love my nephew. And he was like, of course, how could you ever think that you wouldn't? And that was huge for me, because all my relationships with these kids in my life was this balance of let yourself love them, but don't let yourself love them too much, because they're not going to love you. And so I'm glad that it went as well as it did. My sister lives in the Middle East, and she's very conservative. Telling her, which I did via WhatsApp, which is so ethnic, it didn't go so well. She didn't react super well. It was not great. She essentially told me that she loves me because I'm her brother, but that her kids weren't allowed to ever know. And I told her that I'm not accepting that. You know, I said, I'm not going to be treated like some secret because there's nothing wrong with me being gay. And I was really hurt, and we actually didn't talk for a couple of months because I set my boundaries, and I was like, look, if I have to hide who I am to be in your life, I don't want to be in your life, because yes, our relationship is important to me, but not as important as my own self-preservation. Then she apologized a few months later for her shitty behavior and took it back, and we're on better terms now. My parents were pretty supportive. My dad was supportive because, again, I honestly got him to take me out to brunch, and he was really worried. Like, I think he thought I killed someone or got someone pregnant, so he was just like, what's up? And I was like, okay, wait, if I'm gonna get disowned here, like, I want to do it after a good meal that he pays for. So I ordered my favorite Oreo pancakes. I got them with like strawberries and whipped cream. It was really good. And I was like, my dad doesn't speak great English. So in my broken Urdu, I was like, I am one of those guys that likes guys. And I was like, I'm gay. And he was like, okay, thank you for telling me. I support you. And I was like, what? That's it? He was like, yeah, honestly, I thought that it was something much worse, so this is pretty calming. I was like, nice! Super great, went well. And then it was trickier with my mom. Again, got her to take me to this like sandwich place we like, and I told her, and she was really shocked. She was really upset when she found out that I live with my boyfriend and found out that I'm agnostic. And we fought a lot, honestly, but it took her some time, and she's okay with it now. She even a few months ago met my boyfriend, which is huge, and I'm really lucky that she's put in the work that she did, because, you know, I understand the cultural context of her viewpoint. It was not so great with some of my aunts and uncles and cousins. I had some really nasty things said to me from people that I grew up caring about, and it hurt a lot, but I'm happy not to be close to those people anymore. You know, it sounds bad, but being prepared to be cut off by everyone as a child makes it a lot easier for if it ever happens. And I was able to love these people despite our differences for my entire life. And when they found out about our differences as adults, they weren't able to love me the same way. And honestly, that speaks for their character way more than it does for mine. So I know a lot of this sounds like smooth sailing and that it went super well, and, you know, it was just a smooth ride, but it wasn't. I'm kind of glossing over a lot of the bumps, but the key for the reason it went well was because I had provided my family with some ultimatums. I told them the extent to which I love them, but I also made sure they knew the extent to which I was ready to let go of them. It was more like, I've been prepared to be disowned since I was a child. I'm financially independent now and I have my own home. I love you a lot, but I'm also ready to cut this relationship out of my life if that's the decision you choose to make. And standing my ground the way I did was the reason it was able to go as well as it did. And that said, I still honestly recognize that my viewpoint is one that comes with like a ton of privilege, and I get that. And I totally accept that, and I'm not going to pretend that that's not obviously a big factor, you know, it's totally recognized. But I also simultaneously wanted to highlight some of the tools and like things I had to think through before coming out that made it easier for me and easier for my family to accept me. So I hope that helps. Yeah, that is my story. If you're someone from the South Asian community, you know how toxic our community can be. I'm very open about my sexuality now, and all my family and all my family friends know. I made this like big Facebook status, and I have like all the aunties and uncles and cousins there, so they know. Some people just don't acknowledge me anymore, and like, it is what it is. People talk shit, and honestly that's fine with me. Again, it's a really shitty part of our community is that there's a lot of gossip. And a lot of judgment, and our community can be a big reason we don't come out about a lot of things, like not even just sexuality, but like maybe religious beliefs, maybe not even religious beliefs, maybe having a significant other. Realizing how petty our community can be at times made the value of their words diminish that much, and made me think, no, like I want to be one of the people in our community who isn't like that, and I want to strengthen our community. And that was another important thing that went into me coming out. There are people from the South Asian community in the queer community. There are people from the South Asian community who are allies to the queer community. You know, coming out is scary as hell. Do it when you feel ready, and know that if and when you do, you have the power to break this intergenerational cycle of repression. You know, something I think about a lot is how many queer aunties and uncles do I know? Like, how many of them have either repressed it so hard that they don't even know that they're queer, or how many of them know that they're queer and just accepted this life and this marriage? You know, there's a lot happening there that we need to break, and, you know, if that provides you with motivation to come out, then you can take that. But if it doesn't, that's also very okay, because of course everyone's situation is so circumstantial. But it's something that kind of went through my head that I thought was like significant. And yeah, that's basically it. I wanted to share my story with anyone who may be going through something similar, because I wish I had another South Asian person to talk to me about this stuff. Another South Asian person that I could see who was like an open member of the queer community. I know that would have made the world of a difference when I was younger. And I don't know what your story is. I don't know how it'll go. All I can say is that despite what others and you might be telling yourself, you deserve love. And finally, I hope you know that our queer community is built on love and acceptance, and there are a whole group of people out there who you haven't met yet who will love you